Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Foresight TV. Before we get started with this great conversation today, I want to say thanks so much for watching Foresight TV. It is not a place for everybody, but if you are in senior living and you're committed to creating great experiences for residents, team members, and families, this is the place for you. We tackle hard questions. We face hard ideas, difficult ideas. So this is the place. I'm so glad you're here. First thing is I'd like to say is I'd love to hear from you about what you're doing to make a difference in the lives of residents, team members, and families. And we'd also love to hear from you about how we can serve you better. What should we be talking about that maybe we're not talking about? Or if you think we put out some content you think is completely wrong, we love our critics. They help us get better, think about things in new ways. In addition to Foresight TV, we produce a whole bunch of great thought leadership content. We've got LinkedIn posts pretty much every day. We've got the Foresight podcast, Tech Tuesday. Most importantly is the Senior Living Foresight website, where we publish new leadership content every day. They're not super long, but we can go more in depth in print than we can do when we're doing a live stream or a post on LinkedIn. It is completely free. It's easy to subscribe to. There's a QR code up on the screen that you can use, or you can use the link in the chat. The last thing I want to talk to you about is we have just launched a brand new supplier directory. It is a place for you to go if you need some service or product and you're trying to figure out who to use. If you're a vendor, it's free to register for a very, very basic membership. And the upgraded premium sponsorships are not very expensive, and they get you a lot of bonus. This directory, we will send out emails. The first one will go out at the end of next week, where we will be promoting the premium people. It's the easiest way to work with us, inexpensive. It's something you should do. And with that, let's get on with the show. Hey guys, Steve Moran here. Patti, welcome to Foresight TV. So we first met at CES, right?
Yeah, just like not even a little bit over a month ago.
Yeah, so I got to ask, well, actually, I better do this first. Tell us who you are and what you're passionate about.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for having me, Steve. I am Patti LaFleur, and I am the former care partner for my beautiful mom, Linda, who had younger onset dementia. And I have this beautiful opportunity to be the programs lead for Lorenzo's House, which is a nonprofit organization that is unapologetically focused on families affected by younger onset dementia.
Okay, so let's talk about what younger onset dementia means. What does young mean?
Yeah, so younger onset dementia is anyone that is showing symptoms before the age of 65. So for some people that could be, for my mom, she was 59 years old, but for some people that could be as early as in their 30s and 40s. And it encompasses all forms of dementia. So it includes younger onset Alzheimer's, FTD, vascular dementia, mixed dementia, Lewy body dementia, and the various other forms, but it's showing symptoms before the age of 65.
Okay, terrific. Before I want to get into more about this, what it means, how it's different than dementia in older people. But before that, I have to ask, how did you like CES? What did you find that was insightful? What did you hate?
Yeah, I found CES to be such a beautiful opportunity. So we have recently had joined the AARP Age Tech Collaborative at the end of last year. And we joined as a test bed organization. And it was such a beautiful opportunity, especially in the health and wellness, and especially in kind of the senior living tech gadgets, to really learn about the beautiful technology and innovation and thoughtfulness that is happening to really support the aging population as well as, when we're thinking about younger onset dementia, those that are not aging, but maybe need some more supports to help them around the house and to live and thrive. So it was awesome, but also really overwhelming.
It is very overwhelming. Did you see any technology that you just went, oh, I had never thought of that? That was so cool.
Yes, 100%. One of the coolest things I saw was actually a sensor that is for like adult underwear. So it can let you know if it is like how saturated the adult underwear was. And honestly, when I was caring for my mom, the pieces around incontinence was like some of the hardest parts of the journey. And so to just be able to have an app on my phone that could let me know if I needed to change her adult underwear would have saved us so much time, because so often I'd be like, "Mom, are you wet?" And she'd be like, "No," or "Yes." And it was never accurate, and I
Right.
never knew. And it caused a lot of agitation and frustration. And so really there were so many independence tools and tools that allowed for people to maintain agency. There was also these really like Rendeavor's doing this beautiful stuff with these VR headsets to allow senior living communities to have access to other opportunities that they wouldn't have had. So I'd never thought about using virtual reality as like a connection or community tool. And it's really, really inspiring the way people are thinking about just holistically supporting aging adults or those that are aging that need extra support.
Great. So, in your organization, are you providing senior living or providing housing? Are you supporting people at home or both? Or talk to me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So at Lorenzo's house, we provide virtual support for families. So everything that we do is we have holistic programs that we provide specifically for the care partners themselves. So we have a bright brunch for female care partners, a light lounge for male care partners. But what makes us so unique is that we are providing virtual support for the sons and daughters who have a parent with younger onset dementia. So we have, we call them light clubs, which are virtual hangouts for young people to build community and learn tools and strategies and share resources. So often we will spend time talking about what adult day programs are available in our, especially our young adult and our care partner groups. We'll also spend time talking about what resources, just recently in our last light club was our international light club. Someone was talking about making the decision to move her mom into memory care. And so we shared transition strategies. We share strategies on how you pick the right the right senior living community. And then we also do a virtual youth summit that takes place every June. And it is fully virtual, and it brings together young people from across the globe to build tools and strategies, connect, and then to learn advocacy strategies.
And so these young people who have parents with
Yeah.
dementia.
Yep.
And so I guess you could be early 20s potentially, right?
Well, actually, so we serve children as young as 4. So we have a 4 to 7-year-old young children's group, and these are children whose parent, not a grandparent, have younger onset dementia, and we will use picture books as a way to talk about it, right? So maybe like I have one next to me because we had it the other day.
Good.
Like we'll use a picture book and talk about what's going on with Papa Bear as a way to talk about brain change in the home. Then we have an 8 to 12-year-old group where they're really focused in on building community and connections and friendships and just this opportunity to be a kid with other people with a parent with brain change. So it's super beautiful space. And then with our teens, they're trying to explore, how do I tell a friend, right? How do I, as a 14-year-old, begin to tell a classmate that my dad has brain change or my mom has cognitive changes and that is why she is acting that way? And then how do we navigate those moments of stigma that might happen at a basketball game or at the grocery store? So we do a lot of our sons and daughters we serve are, to your point, they're in their 20s, they're between the age of 18 to 35, but we have groups for even younger.
Wow. So
Yeah.
One of the things, so I'm not sure whether you're aware, but I recently completed a 60-day journey as a senior living consumer. My stepfather, who's 91, he'll be 92 in a few weeks, has uh, early to moderate, early to mid-stage dementia.
Yeah.
He was living with us, ended up in the hospital, and with COVID. And so we did senior living. It was a pretty terrible experience.
Yeah.
And one of the things that really hit me in that, the community wasn't great. I'm going to start by saying that. So
Yeah.
it's not necessarily typical, although I'm not sure as untypical as I'd like, but it was probably a bit worse than usual. But one of the things that really struck me was how little attention they paid to me as a family
Yeah.
member. And as I've talked to other operators, even people who I have great respect for and who do really good things, it seems pretty clear that family members sort of get they're the ones who are making the decisions and they're
Yeah.
writing the checks, and the community is really completely dependent on them as decision makers, and they don't get very much care.
Yeah.
And so, talk to me just a little bit about what family members need and what makes their lives better.
Yeah, I think, that is such an important point, Steve, right? Like now you've experienced that as someone who was walking this journey with your dad. And so often when you are making that decision for memory care or skilled nursing or assisted living, right, you're in kind of a rush or in kind of a crisis, right? For you, your dad had ended up in the hospital. And so then you kind of have to make these decisions super fast. And so what you need in those situations is someone to share the options with you, right? Like, what are your options? What kind of transition will this look like? I often hear from our families, like, how do I make this transition? What does it look like to support a family member that is making this heavy decision and then has to be able to navigate what that means? Like, what is helpful in those moments? What kind of questions should I be asking of the facility? What kind of things? I mean, even for me personally, I am now the carer for my aunt, and she recently had to move into a memory care facility. And thankfully, I know kind of how systems work given my experience with my parents and my role here at Lorenzo's house. But even then, it felt like I was really rushed through all of my conversations. And the one thing that I could have asked for is just more time. Don't just schedule a 30-minute intake meeting. Give me an hour. Give me the space to ask questions. Share some transition strategies, not only for the person moving into the facility, but for the family members. And then with our families, it's confusing enough for the care partner adult. But imagine if you're 9 years old and you're moving your dad into this facility, how can you feel comfortable in that space as well?
Yeah, and I'm thinking, if I were a kid, how would I explain that, right? And it
Yeah.
either means I can't bring my friends around my parent at all, or I bring them and I just don't know what I'm going to get. My parents might behave in very strange ways that
For
compared
sure.
to other parents, right? And that becomes really tough.
Yeah, well, and it's so hard too, is like even once when you're making that decision for someone to live in a senior living space, they've progressed in their disease. Often that's when you're making that decision, right? So often even our young people will be like, how do I communicate with my dad now? Or how do I interact with my mom? What kind of things can we do together as they start to lose some of their skills and cognitive abilities and some of their communication skills? So what could it look like to still have a really meaningful, beautiful relationship with your parent? Can be so tricky. It's tricky I'm an adult who works in this space. I can't imagine if I was 7 and like, how do I interact with my mom? Often at Light Club, one of our beautiful teens, her dad lives in a care facility, and she's like, how do I have phone calls with him, right? He can't speak as easily. So how can we have still this beautiful relationship where I can call or I can video call him but he isn't able to communicate in the way that he used to.
Yeah, it is so difficult. I had a question in my head and it disappeared on me. So let's try this.
I understand.
Yeah.
Happens
So
to me all the time.
let me try this. Let's just start with, I come to you and I'll actually paint a more, I'm going to start with something a little more vivid. Now she was probably my next door neighbor, or a woman 6 or 8 months ago. She was diagnosed with some type of, with Alzheimer's, I believe, and early 70s. We're not real close to them. I know him a little bit better, and her mom had gone through dementia, and she chose to end her own life rather than go through what she went through with her mom. And it was just a horror. I know I can't. My wife and I had been gone for the weekend. We kind of came back to find that she'd passed away, and I sort of heard from neighbors, and then a week or two later, he came out, and he spent a long time just talking to me about it. But the thing that occurs to me is that if somebody like you, I mean, I know she was older than we were sort of target, but
Yeah,
maybe if she'd had the opportunity to talk to somebody like you who's gotten this diagnosis, she might have had enough hope to continue to live, right?
for
So
sure.
what would you say to I'm actually gonna give you two really hard questions.
Okay. I
The
love
first
hard
question,
questions.
yeah, so the first question is somebody comes to you and said, I was just diagnosed with Alzheimer's. What do I do now? I'll give them to you one at a time. Let's start with that one.
Yeah.
What
Well,
what do you tell them?
I mean, the first thing that I'm going to say is I am so sorry that we have to meet under these circumstances, right? I wish that no one had to walk this journey. But since you are walking this journey, like, please know that you have found a community of people that are here to support you. So I would also then direct that person to what resources are out there, right? So here are resources within Lorenzo's house. We have support for your family members. We have support for your children. If you have children, here is I can match you with another person who is in the early stages of this diagnosis, so that you can have someone who understands and someone you can have you can build community with, where you can talk about these things. I'm going to also connect them to the resources that I know in the area that they live in, right? I think if you have resources and knowledge and a community around you to support you, it can give you hope, right? It can give you that space where you can vent and say, this is hard, and there's grief and there's sadness and getting a diagnosis like that. But there are also other people out here who are my community. And I know something that we hear from families all the time, specifically from the parent that is the one that has the younger onset diagnosis, is it gives them so much peace and hope to know that Lorenzo's house is a space for their family, right? So often you get that diagnosis. My mom, when she got that diagnosis, was worried about herself, but she was worried about my dad and how he was going to survive this. She was worried about how me and my sister were going to survive this. So if my mom would have known 15 years ago that Lorenzo's house would have got us, then she would have had a little bit more hope in her journey and not the anxiety, like, what's going to happen to my family? Because honestly, that's often what people hear. What I hear is that they don't want to be a burden to their family. They don't want to cause extra stress for their family. So when you know your family is safe and secure, you can feel a lot better. So I think I would meet them where they were at. I think that I would offer resources on a slow pace. And then I would also just say, we got your family. We are here for you. How can we help?
Well, and I guess the other thing that occurs to me, and I think that a big part of it would be, is that your life is not over, and there you can still
Totally.
experience joy and have experiences and those kinds of things, right?
Totally.
Um,
Totally.
I look at my stepfather, and he's on a pretty steady decline. And yet he's still, being able to just sit with us and watch TV, to go out to dinner, even when he doesn't say much. It's really, really important to him, and it gives him a quality of life. And he sits and watches old John Wayne movies on Prime
Totally.
virtually every night, and so it's a quality of life.
100%. And same with my mom. I mean, I felt like she loved, like, it was just about us as her caregivers, as her son or as her daughter and as her husband, embracing her new normal. So my mom really loved, she had a robotic pet from Angel's Innovation. She loved that pet. Popcorn came everywhere. And so instead of being like, oh, mom, you don't like stuffed animals, we embraced it. Popcorn came everywhere with us. My mom and I traveled. It looked different. It was hard, but we put things in place so that we could still find joy and dance and laugh and love and live our life as much as we could with modifications.
Okay, you've largely already covered my second question, but I want to throw it to you because I think it's
Okay.
worthwhile talking about it specifically, and I figured out the one I'd forgotten. So,
Oh, good.
so I'll get to that in a minute because I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget it again. Does that mean I've got dementia? No,
Nope.
it just means I'm human, right?
It
So
just means
anyway,
we all have a lot on our plates.
that's right. So the question would be, I come to the realization that somebody I love, somebody is important to me, has dementia. How do I deal with that? And I'm gonna paint a little bit of a picture for you. When my stepfather was in the hospital, it was a very difficult situation, as hospitals often do. It exacerbates the sort of the negative behaviors. He was pulling out IVs, and they were restraining him. Officially they were restraining him for fall protection, but he wasn't really a fall risk. They put him in a posy because they didn't want him behaving. It was barbaric. We had big fights, but I sat and I wrote one Friday morning in my journal, and I talked about how incompetent I felt, how terrible I felt, how much I needed that. And the last thing that I realized, and at this point in time, I've been in it deep enough that it's pretty much gone, but so much guilt.
Yeah.
How do I as a family member deal with all of that?
I mean, it is so hard and heavy. And I think that the big thing that you can do is give yourself as much grace as you can in those moments, because no one knows how to navigate it. You're in senior living and you still felt this heaviness. We are all, when you're in these situations, you have to advocate so hard for your person, and it's exhausting, and there's grief, right? So naming that and then giving yourself grace is so important. And the other thing that I would say is finding your community is the key, right? You have to find other people that can relate to that can offer support, ideas, resources. For me, it was so comforting to know that in a time of crisis, there was someone that I could text, right? I had shared my story with my mom on social media. And so I had this group of other young adults that understood pieces of my story. So being able to reach out to them in those moments of crisis, which is, what we do at Lorenzo's house, we're bringing families together. So they have those people when those moments happen, right? People reach out for support in the beginning. And then when a crisis happens is like really common times for people to reach out for support. And so, just finding those places and those people that can support you through, and granting yourself grace, patience, and love, because it is heavy and it's hard. And especially with something like with dementia, you're losing your person little by little. And so how can I meet myself and give myself the love I need in those moments?
Yeah. The other thing that happens to me that I guess I wasn't that surprised about, is that mostly his friends, and he's old enough that his friend pool continues to shrink.
Yeah.
But mostly his friends have been incredibly supportive. And of course, within the senior living community, part of my, I don't know what you call it, therapy, but part of my wrestling with this is to write about it. And because it's helpful, I've published a number of articles, and I've had so many people reach out and be so supportive and talk to me about how they're using the things I'm writing to go out and talk to their team and train their team to be better as it relates to these challenges, which has been really good. But he's got my stepfather Gary's. He's got one friend, similar age, and he is, in fairness, he's trying to be helpful.
Yeah.
But he keeps reaching out to tell me all the things I need to be doing to make
Oh,
his life better.
so
And a lot of times they're things we're trying. Sometimes they're things that are completely unrealistic. Any thoughts on helpful friends?
I know. I mean, sometimes I think it's just helpful to name that helpful friends aren't helpful, right? Like,
That's
so
right.
what is your kind response that you could give to someone that's not helpful? In fact, in our young adult light club, we often talk about this. So when someone's trying to be helpful, right? They may have found the newest diet that is going to help with dementia, or they have found the newest book. We often figure out, like, how do you craft a text message or a response that's like, thank you for thinking of me, but that isn't helpful for what we're doing, right? Like, really, how do you know the person, and thank them for seeing them and being supportive, but also name your boundaries, right? Boundaries on this journey are so hard because everyone has opinions. Everyone wants to help, and it sounds like his friend just wants him to be to have the support he needs. So, like, naming thank you, I appreciate that, but not helpful, right? Like,
Yeah.
really, it's so hard. And it's just, I think, even if you just remember sometimes, like, I think for me, it was often my mom's friends. I'd be like, they're trying to be helpful, they're trying to be helpful, they're trying to be helpful, right? And, like, I don't need to respond to every text message. I don't need to respond to every email. I can just know that that is their way of being helpful, and be like, but I also know it's not, and naming that and laughing and rolling with it. I mean, laughter was my biggest key. Like, okay, here we go again. Like, we're doing this. We're
Yeah.
just going to laugh it off.
Well, and it's really, for me, it's really hard because in sort of the last go around, he sent me this long email and he'd done all this research of all these resources that were available, adult daycare programs and day programs. And it was like, well, I want to say, you don't think we've thought about and tried all that stuff already?
100%.
And but he was trying to be helpful, and finally I sent him an email. I mean, my response was, thank you so much. I know how much you care. I know this is hard for you, but
Yeah.
and I said, frankly, the problem I've got right now is that I wish that stuff worked, but my biggest challenge right now is just to get him to take a shower. I
Yeah.
can't, I've got to get through those basics. I just can't get him to do that. I think he'd have a better life if he did that, but he's still got to agree to do it, even in his
100%.
declining state.
100%. Right. You're right. In a lot of ways, it's hard because you're like, yeah, that would be really awesome, but we can only do what we can do.
That's exactly right. So we are almost out of time. I'd love to have you give me a little bit more plug on Lorenzo House, how people can reach you, resources how you can help people.
100%. Thank you. So happy to do that. So, as I said, yeah, Lorenzo's House, we are a nonprofit social impact organization. All of our programs are free for families. They are all virtual. We have our one-to-one care-to-care match. We have our light clubs for our kids and our spaces for our care partners. We have grief groups. We have Shine On, which is our grief space for those whose person has passed, like my mom. We have our youth summit that takes place in June. So to get a hold of us at Lorenzo's House, you can go to our website, which was just up, lorenzoshouse.org. You can reach out. Thank you. You can reach out to us on Instagram. You can send an email to info@lorenzoshouse.org. That's our LinkedIn. We greet every family that walks through our virtual doors. So when they reach out with an email, we greet them with myself, or one of my trained volunteers will welcome you into our space and lean in and listen. And so just please keep Lorenzo's House on your radar. Even if you aren't affected by younger onset dementia now, you never know when you will be. So sign up for our newsletter and just stay close.
Well, the last question I have to ask, if I've got a loved one who's got sort of more traditional older dementia, do you have resources for them too?
So when people reach out that aren't younger onset dementia, we still reach back out and we offer resources and support and connections to organizations that we have beautiful partnerships with. So we'll often direct them to HFC, so Hilarity for Charity. They have incredible support groups. We will often direct them to the Alzheimer's Association or the Association for Frontal Temporal Dementia. And so we will often make sure that we are directing them in the way that makes the most sense for their family.
Terrific. So it's a place to start, even if you've got somebody who's older, and the response is so variable. For all I've talked about all my challenges, frankly, it's been much harder for my wife. She's done some support groups because she's a retired nurse, but I live this every day and she doesn't. And everybody reacts differently, right? And it's in some sense, it's like when a loved one dies, there are people react very differently, and there's not a right or wrong. You just figure out how to cope, or maybe, I think you can even thrive through this. So
100%, right? You can, with the right resources and community and support, you really can find joy and connection and thrive through this, but also knowing that it's hard and heartbreaking and there's so many challenging days while still trying to find community. So yes, that is so true, Steve. And thank you so much for having me and for letting me share a little bit about Lorenzo's house today.
Well, you're my hero. When I see people like you, I run across people like you who have a great passion for making the lives of other people better. You're like miracle workers. You're world changing. So thank you for what you do. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Foresight TV.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm just so honored to be part of the Lorenzo's House team that was founded by Diana, our founder, and just so thankful for these opportunities to be here. So thank you, Steve.
Thank you very much. Have a great weekend.